Supernatural, Chapter 2, The Shape of the Hunt. Some dangers did not announce themselves with teeth. Some arrived softly, dressed in familiar faces, patient smiles, and the kind of coincidence a lonely heart might mistake for fate. They waited in doorways. They learned your name. They watched from the edge of crowded rooms until the music, the lights, and the warmth of other bodies made fear feel unreasonable. By the time Nia understood, the night had followed her. It had already learned how close it could stand. By the time Nia's shift ended and Haley's name lit up her phone screen, the sky above Seoul had deepened into velvet blue, the city glowing awake beneath it. Haley was already bubbling over with plans, her voice bright and insistent through the speaker, and Nia, still carrying the strange weight of her dream. Professor Alec's unsettling nearness, and the charged encounter at the bookstore, let herself laugh and say yes, telling herself that maybe a night out was exactly what she needed. A shower, music, a crowded dance floor, something loud enough, bright enough, human enough to drown out the feeling that something unseen had been following her all day. By the time Haley arrived, Nia had changed twice and still did not feel settled in her own skin. The first outfit had felt too soft, too vulnerable somehow, as though the wrong set of eyes might read too much from it. The second was better, fitted enough for Haley not to complain, modest enough for Nia to feel like herself. As she stood in front of the mirror, smoothing her hands over the fabric, she caught her own reflection, hesitating. For a fleeting second, the memory of warm breath, watchful eyes, and that dreamlike sense of being hunted brushed the back of her mind again. Then Haley's impatient horn sounded from outside, sharp and bright, slicing through the tension. Nia grabbed her purse, slipped on her shoes, and stepped out into the Seoul night, hoping the music waiting for her at the octagon would be loud enough to silence whatever dark thing had followed her out of sleep and into the day. Haley was already halfway out of the car by the time Nia stepped onto the curb, the bass from inside the octagon pulsing so hard it seemed to rise up through the pavement itself. Neon spilled across the entrance in restless waves of violet and blue, washing over the crowd gathered outside in flashes of color that made everyone look a little unreal. Girls in tight dresses and sharp eyeliner laughed too loudly over the music leaking through the walls. Men leaned in close when they spoke, their cologne and confidence thick in the cold night air. Everything about the place felt alive, humid with heat, want, and the promise of forgetting yourself for a few hours. Haley turned back with a grin so wide it was almost wicked. One hand already stretched toward Nia like she was pulling her across a threshold she'd been born to cross. Nia forced a smile and took it, though something low in her stomach tightened as she lifted her gaze to the club's glowing sign. The light caught the edge of her pendant just before she tucked it beneath her top, a small private gesture of comfort. Then Haley tugged her forward, and the doors opened to swallow them whole. Inside. The club's atmosphere hit Nia all at once. Heat pressed against her skin, perfume, sweat, liquor, and smoke braided together into something dizzying. Lights cut through the darkness in violent, rhythmic flashes, illuminating bodies in fragments, an arm thrown upward, a mouth tipped into laughter, the glint of jewelry at a throat, a hand sliding low along someone's waist, before the dark reclaimed them again. For a moment, Nia stood still just beyond the entrance, caught between overwhelm and fascination. The room moved like one living thing, writhing and glittering under the beat. Haley, of course, looked completely at home. She turned with both hands lifted, already dancing backward as she shouted something Nia couldn't hear over the music. Nia laughed despite herself, shaking her head, and followed her deeper into the crowd, trying to let the noise loosen the knot that had sat between her shoulders all day. But even as she stepped into the lights, even as the bass began to shake, thought clean out of her body, she could not shake the feeling that the night had been waiting for her long before she ever arrived. 2 hours passed before Nia and Haley finally came up for air. They had danced through an endless stream of EDM and hip-hop, mostly with each other, drifting in and out of the crowd, while drinks somehow appeared and disappeared from Nia's hand. Normally she was careful about where her drinks came from, careful not to accept anything she hadn't seen poured herself. But tonight the music was loud, the lights were hypnotic, and her caution had begun to blur at the edges. By the second to last round on the dance floor, Haley declared that fatigue had finally found its way into her arms and legs. Nia, laughing, agreed. One more song, they decided without saying it. One more rotation. The bass boomed in rapid succession, while some sharp, synthesized melody cut clean through it. Nia let her shoulders find the rhythm, swaying with her arms half raised, her body answering the music with the kind of freedom she rarely allowed herself. She closed her eyes for only a few seconds. When she opened them, a familiar face stood in front of her. Mr. Collegiate. From Nia's quick assessment, dancing was not among his gifts. His attempts to keep pace with the bodies around him were awkward, almost jerky, and under any other circumstance she might have laughed. But the moment recognition pierced the haze in her head, her thoughts began to stumble. How had he ended up here? At the same club? On the same night? She closed her eyes again, hips moving to the next track, but something about the rhythm no longer felt like freedom. It felt like surrender. As if invisible strings had fastened themselves to her limbs and were now tugging her where they wanted. Her awareness of goings-on in the room dulled. Music that screamed in her ears seemed farther away. And even with her eyes shut, she could feel the weight of him, heavy, fixed, watching. It unsettled her enough to scratch at the edges of her caution. When she opened her eyes again, the distance between them was gone. He stood so close that when she lowered her arms, her hands brushed the hard plane of his chest and abdomen. He didn't flinch. The faint smile that had first greeted her was gone now, replaced by something darker, something so intent that it bordered on lust. The word flashed through her mind, bright and unmistakable, followed by the strange impression of black and crimson shadowing him like a king's crown. Maybe it was the alcohol. Maybe it was the lights. Maybe it was him. Whatever the reason, he seemed taller now than he had in the bookstore, broader somehow, more imposing, haunting. And still Nia could not make herself step away. He slowed to near stillness, his gaze fixed on her as though nothing else in the club existed. "Nia?" Haley's voice cut through the moment like a blade. Nia blinked hard, the spell breaking beneath the crash of the next beat. She looked at him, managed a polite smile, and said, "I'm gonna go." He said nothing. Haley appeared at Nia's side then, one arm sliding around her waist as she took in the silent tension between them. "Come on," she said, throwing him a thin, false smile. "Let's go." And before he could follow, or before Nia could think too hard about why she almost hadn't moved at all, the two of them disappeared back into the pulsing crowd. Haley didn't loosen her grip on Nia until they were just out of the stranger's line of sight. "Nia!" Haley almost shouted, in part because of the music and the other, because her friend still looked out of it for lack of a better word. "Hun, what's wrong?" Haley's calm demeanor began to teeter toward panic. "Look at me, Nia." Haley gently held her hands. Nia closed her eyes again and inhaled deeply in an attempt to find her way out of the brain fog. "I'm fine." She shook her head slightly. "I'm fine." But the words were light, but not reassuring. "Come on, let's get some water." "Here." Haley pointed to an open seat just outside of the dance floor and not too far away from the bar. "I'll get us some water." Haley, never having seen her friend in this transfixed state, was now yelling her instructions. "Don't move!" Haley didn't trust separating from her friend. She also didn't want to lose her in the sea of bodies milling around the bar. With Nia planted in one spot, she turned to leave when she almost screamed as she stepped face to face with Alec. Though she was startled, the XY62 deity prototype was a welcome sight. "Professor!" Her voice almost caught in her throat. "Haley!" A broad smile greeted her immediately. "Hey, what are you doing here?" The answer was obvious, but the lilt in his voice, projecting the statement as a question, rolled over Haley's conscience. Unsure of how long he'd been standing there, or maybe it happened to be that he was passing through the throng of clubgoers at that moment, the truth didn't matter. He was someone she knew, someone she trusted. "Haley, are you okay?" Alec placed one hand gently on her shoulder. "It's not me." The act is somewhat calming. Haley gestured toward Nia. "She's kinda out of it." Alec looked just beyond her to see Nia's gaze focused on the dimly lit and densely packed dance floor. Alec stood stark still, his smile fading with each passing second. With his attention solely on Nia, he found himself scanning the crowd as intently as she was. He stepped closer to her and then once more. Haley's vigilance of her friend kept her right at his heels, unable to get a private moment to call Callan. He also needed time alone with Nia. Haley was right. Something was wrong with this scene. Nia didn't acknowledge his presence. Instead, she held the pendant that hung low around her neck. Alec clocked the jewel as it seemed to glow under the club lights. Instead of polite interrogations or consolations, he observed, he watched her intently, following the trajectory of her focus. He scanned the crowd with much cruelty, and just as he was about to acquiesce, he felt it, the feeling that someone was watching her, and now him as well. Instinctively, Alec positioned himself directly in front of Naya, blocking her view entirely. His eyes narrowed as he scanned the mass of undulating body parts, and then he saw something. A man? Had to be. The dark silhouette's stillness was the exact juxtaposition to the activity around him. Alec stood 6'2". Upon seeing this, he straightened his posture, as if to elongate himself even more. Haley stood equally still as Alec. She was so close that she could feel heat radiating from him, so much so that her attention moved from the crowd to him. How is this possible? The thought briefly skipping past other pressing thoughts in her mind. Alec closed his eyes, inhaled deeply, and all matters of time slowed, activating his psychological focus to push past Naya's scent, which seemed to envelop him, disorienting his sense of environmental awareness. With that, the red-black aura began to come into focus against the montage of swirling colors. "What are you?" Alec mouthed. The words floated through sub-bass synths, kick punches, and track lighting and reached his ears. Alec waited. There was no response in kind, only void. Instead, the reddish-black aura seemed to intensify, highlighting its dark silhouette even more. Instinctively, Alec reached for his cell phone. This was a problem, and Callan needed to know. Before Alec could execute his plan, Go Harin appeared at his side. "Professor, here you are. I've been waiting in the VIP." Her smile was wide. Her voice was light and inviting. She approached Alec in a most familiar way. Her presence pulled Alec back to them. He acknowledged Harin, but his annoyance was evident. Refocusing his attention to Nia. "Haley?" "Nia." Harin called out over the thrum of the bass. Haley's brows knotted, as she hadn't connected how this woman knows them. But grateful for additional support, Haley watched as Harin knelt to Nia's eye level. "Hey, it's me, Harin from photography class." She gave another reassuring smile. "You look like you've been on the dance floor too long." She grinned. "Come go with us." Harin gestured towards Alec. "The professor has VIP. We can rest there." Harin gently slid her hand in Nia's, guiding her to her feet without resistance. It was only then would Haley fully let go of the fright that attached itself to her shoulders. Somewhere on the dance floor, Mr. Collegiate watched his prize escorted from the edge of his view and into obscurity. The separation from his prey wasn't seen as failure. Instead, it raised a primitive compulsion for the hunt. With new bodies occupying the VIP section, the bottle girl materialized almost as quickly as they returned. "Hey, everybody!" The scantily clad girl pranced through a few bystanders into their section. Haley watched as the girl named some top-shelf liquor, where the name on the bottle would surely draw attention of the commoners who could only afford one glass, or possibly two at best. Harin matched the girl's energy, beat for bounce, while Alec's plastered smile returned to its rightful position. "What do you say?" Alec asked over the music. "One bottle." He leaned forward and gave that plastic smile. "I don't think we can, Professor. I think we should just go home." Haley spoke for herself and Nia. I think I know what we should do," Harin cut into Haley's speech. "She's right, Alec. Maybe it's time for food. What about we go eat?" Harin continued with an innocent, disarming enthusiasm. "Professor, how about that restaurant we went to that one time?" Harin shot a coquettish glance in Nia's direction. "What do you think, Nia? We've drank enough here. Food sounds so good to me." By now, Nia's brain fog had parted, leaving her with a renewed sense of self-awareness. "That actually sounds really good to me." 40 minutes outside of the province, the town car delivered the group up a slightly windy roadway that opened into a cutaway midway through the hillside. Naya and Haley stood outside of the taxi, marveling at the black steel framework juxtaposed against the natural wood-planked walls. The word Astara, in brilliant white letters, illuminated by soft ambient lights, hung left of the main entry doorway. The hillside greenery gave the aesthetic a comfortable, inviting feel. Haley smiled at Nia. "This place looks amazing," she whispered. Harin smiled at Haley and Naya. "Snazzy, huh? Just wait until you taste the food." She looped one arm through Haley's. And the main chef. He is so hot. Harin giggled, cupping one hand to Haley's ear. Don't let the professor hear that. You know he can be sensitive. But Haley didn't know. And if it were truth or lie, in this lifetime, she would never know. Still, she laughed, as if the words were common knowledge. Now completely disarmed, Haley shared in the secret banter with Ha-Rin as the four of them navigated past the soft glow of box planter lights illuminating the walkway. The restaurant was sparsely inhabited by customers at this hour, as evidenced by the last hangers-on of what appeared to have been a rather large private event. The hostess offered to escort the four to a private table, but Alec requested the chef's table. Haley and Naya looked at one another quizzically, as both seemed more intimate, but no one protested. Alec gave instructions to the hostess that seemed like an extensive list of to-dos. The woman's face remained neutral as she took in every word without having taken a single note to paper or tablet. Moments later, a server returned with chilled waters and canapes. Aside from Harin, have either of you been here before? Alec leaned slightly to one side to show his undivided attention to Haley and Nia. No, the pair said in unison. Great! You will be in for a treat. Alec smiled, warmly this time. It's really late, and it looks like they are trying to close for the night, Naya remarked. It's okay. Everything about Alec from those two words was relaxed, less guarded than earlier in the evening. The owner is a personal friend of mine. A smile, genuine and warm, began to spread across his face. Honestly, he paused and then locked eyes on Nia's. We are like family, brothers. Alec looked introspective at his own statement. And seemingly on cue, Colin Shaw stepped out of the kitchen through the dual swing doors that separated the two rooms. Nia's eyes widened as Alec exchanged pleasantries with Callan. Bro. Alex pulled Callan in for a partial shoulder check and pat. Sorry for the last-minute drop-in. Looks like a successful event. Alec raised an eyebrow as he leaned towards Callan. I happened to run into some of my students at Octagon tonight. Seems like their night was a bit too much, so I thought, let's eat where I know the food will be good, and I don't have to pay. The guys laughed at the playful banter while the girls watched the exchange. Hey, let me introduce you. You already know Harin. She's been here once before. Next is Haley and Nia. Instantly, Callan's eyes locked on Naya's and a small smile melted across his face. Nice to meet everyone. Nia, it's nice to see you again. Nia was visibly surprised to see him. Same. What a coincidence. Callan stopped in front of her and leaned closer to the chef's table. Twice in one day. I'd call this fate. He raised his hands in jest. And now I am nervous because I really have to create something that will prove to you that I am a good cook. The gesture made Naya smile. She looked around the restaurant, clocked the lateness, and true to her thoughtful nature, she replied, No need to do anything special. Whatever you have already is more than enough. Hallie nodded in silent agreement. Their protest didn't matter. Callan responded in kind by dazzling the group with tea-smoked duck, grilled prawn, and purees of this and that. Everything was wonderful. Nia never knew food could be so seductive. The food ensnared her senses. Already in a relaxed state, she started to feel even less inhabited than when they first arrived at Astara. By dessert, something in Nia's core had begun to warm. At first, she blamed the food, the smoked richness of the duck, the sweetness lingering on her tongue, the tea, floral and strange, slipping through her bloodstream like a secret. But then the warmth spread lower, deeper, unfurling beneath her skin until the air around her seemed to change. Conversation softened at the edges. The music moved into her bones. Somewhere behind her, Haley laughed at something Alex said, but the sound reached Nia as if from underwater. The rear of the restaurant opened toward the hillside, where the city glittered below and the sky stretched wide above them, dark blue-black and pricked with stars. Was that the Milky Way? The thought floated through her, dreamy and unguarded. A night like this should be shared with someone you love. The ache that followed was sudden and intimate. It moved through her in waves, the want of hands, lips, warmth, weight. Nia reached for her pendant by instinct, closing her fingers around the stone. Its smooth surface helped anchor her. but only barely. Beside her, Harin went very still. Then she smiled. "Sleepy, hun." Nia only managed a soft, drowsy sound. "Dance with me," Harin whispered. Nia did not protest. Harin drew her slowly to her feet, and beneath the restaurant's low amber lighting, the two of them began to sway. Callan watched from across the room, his expression unreadable. Haley did not notice. Alec had already claimed her attention, charming her into laughter with practiced ease. Everything was performance, and it was working. Colin's gaze stayed fixed on Nia, measuring the softness of her awareness, the looseness in her posture, the way her aura slipped from her in warm, invisible ribbons. But he could not ignore Harin. The closer she moved, the less controlled she became. Nia's aura was immersive, dangerous. Colin was no longer certain Harin understood the shape of her own desire. Harin's fingertips drifted down Nia's arm and came to rest at her waist. She pulled her closer, smiling in that coy, teasing way women did when they knew exactly how much power softness could hold. "You're an amazing dancer," she murmured. The compliment brushed Nia's ear. A small giggle escaped her. "Thanks." Harin reached up and swept Nia's hair to one side, exposing the delicate line of her neck and collarbone. She whispered something Callan could not hear, something clever enough to make Nia smile in that private way. Not laughter meant for a room, but laughter meant for skin, for breath, for secrets. Then Harin leaned in. Maybe her lips touched Nia's neck. Maybe it was only shadow and angle and the slow seduction of music. Callan did not care. Something red and ancient rose behind his eyes. Before he realized he had moved, he was standing behind Nia, his gaze locked on Harin. For one suspended moment, Harin forgot herself. Then fear replaced seduction. She released Nia slowly and stepped back with a graceful smile. "You really are a good dancer," she said, her voice light again, yet her words floated slowly over the music. "Callan, you should try." The song faded into another, slower one. Callan stepped closer, and the air changed before he touched her. "Is it okay if I have this dance?" Nia should have said no. She knew that. Some clear, distant part of her still understood caution, understood late nights and strange men, and the danger of wanting warmth simply because it was offered. But Callan was not offering warmth. He was offering gravity. "Sure," she whispered. His hand settled at her waist, careful at first, almost formal. Then her body moved closer on its own, and his fingers flexed once against the fabric of her dress. Not enough to hold her there, just enough to tell her he had thought about it. Nia looked up. Whatever she saw in his face made her breath thin. Hunger, restraint, something ancient wearing the shape of a man. "You look afraid," she said softly. Colin's jaw tightened. "I am." His voice was low, roughened at the edges. She moved into his arms without hesitation, her hand sliding around his neck as though she had done it before, as though some quiet part of her recognized him. There was no polite distance between them. No careful space, only the heat of her body through the thin fabric of her dress and the slow, ruinous press of her against him. Colin's thoughts sharpened, then scattered. She was too warm, too soft, too willing to trust the shape of his arms around her. Nia rested her cheek near his chest, breaking the gaze that had been eating away at her resolve. She inhaled, and the scent of him struck something deep inside her. Her body answered before her mind could name the feeling. Want bloomed hot, and suddenly beneath her skin, she wanted to climb into his lap. She wanted to subdue him. She wanted to surrender. The contradictions made her dizzy. Colin closed his eyes for half a second, grateful she was no longer looking at him. If she had kept staring, he might have forgotten the truth entirely. She was prey, a sacrifice. He needed her softened, trusting, bound to him long enough to reach the veil of reeds. On the last dark threshold before the next visible crescent, the Veilmeyer ancestor feast would begin. There, before all of Lierinswald, he would present her. And with her bloodline, his dying clan would finally be seen again. Nia hurried through the dense timberland, pushing past the twisted grove until the dry leaves and broken branches gave way to cool moss beneath her feet. The moss swallowed her steps, softening every sound she made. She had not been navigating by sight. The night was too complete for that, too pitch black, swallowing every shape around her, She moved by instinct, by breath, by the damp scent of earth and bark, by the strange pull in her bones that told her where to go. Then the trees opened. Moonlight flooded the forest floor. The brilliance of it nearly blinded her. Relief washed through her aching limbs. Naya squinted against the glow, instantly mistaking light for safety. Everything the moon touched seemed alive, every fern and blade of grass painted in silver green. Far across the clearing, she spotted a pond so still and flat it looked less like water than a piece of sky laid carefully upon the earth. She moved toward it. The water welcomed her with a soft, tepid warmth. Nia eased in until it rose to her shoulders, washing the sweat from her skin, the dampness from her hair, the trace of fear and drool clinging to her clothes. She could not remember how she had escaped. That troubled her most of all. Why would the beast let her run? Why would the stranger? She found a small boulder beneath the surface and lowered herself onto it. Then she inhaled once and slipped completely under. The forest went silent. The night creature's songs dulled beneath the water until the world became nothing but pressure, pulse, and the muted thunder of her own heart. When she surfaced, she leaned back and closed her eyes, letting water slide from her hair, over her face, down the curve of her throat. She stayed that way for so long she lost track of time. Then something disturbed the pond. Nia opened her eyes. A ripple moved across the water. She sat very still, unable to tell what had broken the surface. Moonlight coated the clearing, coated the water, coated her. Droplets rolled slowly down her skin, glowing silver against the richness of her hue. She lifted one arm toward the moon, mesmerized for one fragile moment by the strange artistry of her own body beneath its light. Then the water shifted again. The stranger emerged directly in front of her. He rose slowly, unhurried, as though the pond had been holding him there all along. Silver outlined his silhouette, but his features remained hidden in shadow. "You are here," he said. "I am." "Why do you run from us?" His voice dragged softly over the final word, something inhuman tucked beneath the sound. Nia's throat tightened. "You want to kill me." "Yes. I do not want to die." "I know," his voice lowered. "I wish there were another way." Her breath caught. His silver-coated hand reached for her face. He touched her cheek with a tenderness that made fear ache strangely inside her. His fingers brushed away the wet tendrils clinging to her forehead. Tears stung her eyes. The stranger stood before her, eclipsing the moon, staring down at her as though she were something sacred and doomed. "I hear your heart beat," he growled. Naya trembled beneath his touch. "I hear yours, too," she whispered. A low, violent roar split the clearing. Nia woke with a start. Reality slowly bled into the fabric of Nia's consciousness until she was fully aware that she, in fact, had been dreaming. Grateful of being out of her nightmare, she tried to stretch the stress from her body, only to be met with the solidness of Callan's body. She didn't expect to see him, let alone sleeping in his arms. Careful not to wake him, Nia slowly eased herself from his warmth. Across the room, Haley slept peacefully under the cover of someone's suit jacket. An involuntary smile crept across Nia's face. Haley had been a great friend since the day the two met several years ago, and not once had Nia regretted her decision to befriend the girl. Staring out of the floor-to-ceiling atrium window, Nia watched as the edges of night began to fade into soft blue hues as the sun rays began to spread across the pre-dawn sky. Another scan of the room around her told a story of late nights, early mornings, and exhausted bodies. Haley, Alec, and Harin were sprinkled about the room, all of them resting on separate pieces of lounge furniture. Discarded shoes and purses further affirmed her suspicions, though she doesn't remember when the party turned into a sleepover. Nia stretched a second time this time, marveling at the cracking of her bones. When she looked over her shoulder, her eyes met Callan's. He startled her slightly. He hadn't said anything, he just lay there watching her. "Are you okay?" His voice still gruff with sleep. "Fine, thank you." Nia's smile was organic and soft. Callan clocked how gorgeous she looked, her face streaked by the early morning light. Across the room, Alec observed their exchange. As a matter of fact, Alec had observed the two all night, and he determined that he needed to have a serious talk with Callan. Alec waited until Nia's breathing evened again before he moved. Callan did not look surprised when Alec found him in the narrow corridor outside the private dining room. Dawn had begun to pale the windows behind them, turning the glass from black to blue. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Alec said, You were holding her like she belonged to you." Callan's jaw tightened. "Lower your voice." "No." Alec stepped closer. "Not after tonight." Something dark moved behind Callan's eyes, old instinct rising to meet accusation. "You saw what she is. You felt it." "I felt her fear." "You felt her power." Callan's voice dropped. "Do not dress this up as mercy because she has soft eyes." Alec laughed once, bitter and quiet. "And do not dress murder up as duty because our clan is dying." The silence after that was sharp enough to cut. Callan looked away first. Beyond the wall, Nia slept curled into borrowed warmth, her pendant resting against her throat like a secret the world had not yet earned. Alec glanced toward her, then back at the man who had brought her here under the name of protection. "You think the veil will give them back to you," Alec said. "Your name, your bloodline, your place among the clans." Callan's expression hardened. "But if the price is her," Alec continued, "then maybe our clan was never meant to survive." Callan moved so quickly Alec barely saw him. 1 second there was space between them. The next, Callan's hand was twisted in Alec's shirt, his body crowding him against the wall. "Say that again," Callan growled. Alec did not flinch. "I said," he whispered, "I won't let you kill her." For the first time that night, Callan looked afraid. 2:11 a.m. Mr. Collegiate lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. One hand rested on his forehead, and the other held the satin red hair ribbon. He held it over his face, admiring the simplicity of the design. He dangled the ribbon just above his nose and inhaled deeply. It smelled so much like her that when he closed his eyes, he envisioned her silhouette lying next to him, her soft features staring back at him. Pheromones clung to every crevice of the 60-inch run of material. A small smirk spread across his face, and the petty theft amused him. He had entered and exited the employee lounge undetected. He found her locker with little trouble and rummaged through her tote bag until his fingers landed on something innocuous, something she'd likely not miss right away. He wasn't a thief by nature. He was an alpha hunter, but he found the theft slightly thrilling. He hadn't anticipated such a visceral response. When he saw her on campus that morning, he didn't imagine he could see her that night. It was her carelessness that left her exposed, which created the opportunity to get closer to her. She had left her cell phone open near the register while tending to a customer 3 or 4 aisles over. He spied the text between her and her friend. The word hung in his thoughts for several moments. Friend. A concept he'd long forgotten. Mr. Collegiate's thoughts were all over the place. He replayed the moment he found her amidst the tangle of revelers. He didn't approach her right away. He watched and waited, and when she was exhausted from a night of dancing and drinking, he stepped in with confidence of familiarity, the look of recognition on her face. He wanted to see that exquisite show, wonderment and confusion. He wagered that she'd give him the last of herself and spend time with him simply because of that recognition. One thing that pulled at the edges of Mr. Collegiate's thoughts, the man who showed up out of nowhere. Mr. Collegiate watched the man and wasn't sure if his presence was immaterial, though he could not shake the feeling that the man knew he was in the crowd watching them. "What do you want?" Mr. Collegiate said to the ceiling. "Did he mouth that to me?" He shook the thought way. There is no way he could have known I was watching them. The visual of Alex standing still under the neon lights projected a menacing aura, or maybe it was the way he positioned himself to obstruct the view of Nia. The act seemed deliberate. There is no way he could have known I would hear him. The man is no one. Coincidence, perhaps. Perception, perhaps. He is just a man. Mr. Collegiate let out an audible sigh this time and smelled the ribbon once more. "Thank you, Haley." He checked the time on the clock next to his bed. The glowing blue numbers read 2:30 a.m. "Maybe I'll pay you a visit and thank you in person." He wondered where in the city Nia was. He wanted to see her. He needed to see her again. Hunger started to blossom in the pit of his core. When that happens, the only thing that satiated the hunter was the hunt.
And that brings us to the end of Chapter 2. Nia thought she was stepping into an ordinary night out. A little music, a little dancing, maybe a chance to forget the strange pull gathering around her life. But by morning, The danger had followed her from the club, into her dreams, and into the quiet spaces between the people watching over her. Callan is no longer just the stranger who keeps appearing when Nia least expects him. Alec knows more than he is saying. Haley may be the safest thing Nia has, even when she doesn't understand the world she's been pulled into. And Mr. Collegiate? Well, he is not finished hunting. So, before we move into Chapter 3, I want to know what you think. Callan admits he is afraid. What do you think scares him more? Losing control? Hurting Nia? Or realizing he may not be able to let her go? Alec says he won't let Callan kill Nia. Do you think Alec is acting out of loyalty, guilt, or genuine concern for her? Mr. Collegiate kept Nia's red ribbon like a trophy. What do you think that says about his obsession with her? The moonlit pond dream feels both terrifying and intimate. Do you think the stranger in the dream is warning Nia, claiming her, or asking for forgiveness? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, subscribe, and stay close, because in this story, the thing that wants you is not always the thing you should run from.